how could one of the world's greatest civilizations just vanish? You might be thinking of the Maya or the Easter Islanders, but those are just a couple of examples that happened within the last few thousand years. In today's video, we're going back much further to the Indus Valley Civilization, which at its peak was thriving in what is now Pakistan and northwest India. Their cities were clean and modern, had plenty of food and impressive technology. But after 1,000 years of prosperity around 1300 BCE, the whole thing just kind of ended. I mean, maybe you didn't know about this civilization until right now. We'll get to how that happened in a bit. But first, let's look at what made the Indus Valley Civilization so special. This civilization began around 3300 BCE, which is almost twice as long ago as the Egyptian pyramids. It lasted for more than 2,000 years before finally collapsing around 1300 BCE. The major cities were Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, and Dolavira, all located in the fertile Indus Valley. This was an incredibly advanced civilization, perhaps even more so than contemporary Mesopotamia. The cities were laid out in a grid pattern with carefully planned streets and alleys. Houses had courtyards, bathrooms, and even indoor plumbing. How cool is that? And they used brick to build public buildings and huge walls around the city for protection. Water flowed through pipes from wells to public baths, and sewers carried waste away. Now, keep in mind that this was thousands of years before any of the Greek or Roman cities you've probably heard of. And these guys were doing basically the same stuff. It wasn't only their urban planning that was ahead of its time, but also their trade network. We know that they reached all the way to Mesopotamia because archaeologists have found seals bearing their stamp that were discovered in ancient cities there. These seals usually depicted animals like bulls, unicorns, and elephants. That tells us that Mesopotamians got their raw materials from somewhere else. Furthermore, the Indus people used standardized weights and measures, including the world's oldest known bathroom scale. This suggests a centralized authority that kept order and collected taxes. They may have even had an early form of democracy, since there is no evidence of palaces or temples with enough grandeur to suggest a king or priest ruling over them. And then there's their script, which to this day remains undeciphered. Over 2,500 inscribed artifacts have been found, but nobody knows what language it is or how to read it. If you think that's mysterious, wait until I tell you about their religion. Archaeologists have uncovered many different kinds of artifacts hinting at their religious beliefs, but they don't paint a clear picture. For example, there are figurines of male and female deities, seals depicting animals and plants, and a huge communal bath called the Great Bath at Mohenjo-daro. However, we do not know what rituals took place there, or if they had any sacred writings like other religions. Some scholars speculate that the Indus people may have been early Hindus because some archaeological sites have similarities to later Hindu temples, and some seals depict scenes from the Hindu epic Mahabharata. But that's just a theory, and their religion remains a complete mystery. To sum up the Indus Valley Civilization, their lifestyle was comfortable by most ancient standards. They lived in nice houses, had public services, farmed wheat and barley, and domesticated cows, buffalo, sheep, goats, and chickens. So who wouldn't want to live there? Well, turns out many of them did. In fact, eventually, every last person living in their cities packed up and left. There was no great war, plague, or natural disaster that wiped them out. Instead, everything slowly fell apart. But why? Scholars have come up with a few theories, but none of them are certain. The first theory is climate change. The rivers that sustained the Indus people shifted their course, causing widespread drought. The summer monsoon weakened and stopped raining as much, resulting in less snow melting in the mountains, which in turn reduced the amount of water flowing through the region. Another theory is that the cities were invaded by nomadic tribes known as Aryans, who migrated from Central Asia. This theory used to be widely accepted, but it's now heavily debated. Some scholars claim that there's little archaeological evidence to support it, although others argue that the destruction layer found in some cities may have been caused by a horde. A third theory is that disease or an epidemic caused the collapse. A 2018 study claimed to have found evidence of trauma and healed bones from skeletons found at various sites, which they believed may have resulted from warfare or plague. However, further studies have challenged these claims, saying that they weren't rigorous enough. Finally, another possibility is that the economy simply collapsed cutting off trade along the established routes. Without foreign merchants coming to buy their goods, the Indus people had no other choice but to abandon their cities and become nomads themselves. The weird thing about all of this is that there's no evidence of a single catastrophe, earthquake, flood, or invasion that destroyed their cities. Instead, there are signs of a gradual decline over several centuries. For example, archaeologists found Harappa to be abandoned by 2000 BCE, while Mohenjo-daro was still occupied but in decline. Later excavations revealed that the citadel and lower town were completely destroyed by an earthquake around 1500 BCE, but that was too late for most of the population. It already moved out by then. It seems as if each city suffered its own fate. Some were flooded, others were destroyed by earthquakes, and some were abandoned for unknown reasons. Eventually, the whole civilization seemed to fall apart. However, we don't know exactly when or why. All we have is a few clues left behind by these mysterious people. While they left behind no definitive account of their history, they did leave behind seals, jewelry, pottery, tools, and weapons. These artifacts show a gradual decline after 2000 BCE, suggesting that the civilization began to disintegrate around then. By 1800 BCE, we see an increase in crudely made items and a decrease in metal and stone tools. However, this trend varies between regions, which suggests local variation rather than a uniform decline across the entire area. It seems that each city, town, and village had its own path to ruin, but the reason why they all disappeared is still a mystery. There is no answer that experts agree on, so you can decide for yourself. Did the Indus Valley people fade away into the sands of time, or do their descendants still live among us today? Let me know your theory down below. Thank you so much for watching, and let me know what you thought of the video down below. Also, remember to subscribe if you haven't already, because we have lots of new videos coming soon.